Well, hello, seekers. Welcome back to my podcast, Almost Buddha. Well, today I have a very special guest with me. Each and every guest of mine is special because they are authors. They share their experience. And with me today is Shirley Mckinnon. McKinnon, right? That's how I pronounce Shirley?
McKinnon. Yes, that's
McKinnon.
correct.
Thank you, Shirley. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
I really appreciate it. So, Shirley, who is with us, she has written two books on sales and she has enormous knowledge. She just told me that she has, like, what, a library in the middle of a house and just two rooms full of books. And that's all the knowledge I want to grasp and condense it in a conversation of this 45-50 minutes in our podcast and just see what life can be, how life can be blissful by getting the knowledge as well as sharing that knowledge. So, talking about Shirley's books, she would be the one talking about, but let's start with the introduction. So, Shirley, let our listeners and viewers know who you are.
Oh my goodness, who am I? In my family, of course, I have a family, and I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I have daughters and granddaughters, and I have been married for 35 years, and we're still very much in love and still on our honeymoon. And this is all about the mindset that we do a lot of work together with our mindset and setting our goals coming up soon. And just to tell you, a great way to keep a relationship fresh is that every year we sit down and he writes his business goals and he writes his personal goals. I write my business goals and my personal goals, and then we write our goals as a couple.
Wow, that's such a good activity.
Yeah. And he loves going back to previous journals with a red pen and ticking off everything that we've done. And one of the things that he said a little while ago, it's getting harder and harder to set goals when you have everything you thought you wanted. So it's all a mindset. So as you can tell with me, it took very little to get me talking about mindset, And I'm also an author. My books have arisen from experiences that have happened when I've been training. And I've seen something and I've thought that's weird, and I've done more research and then ended up putting what I found into books. Coach Yourself to Wealth as came from something that happened in a training course, and Team Play, Successful People Strategies came because in my coaching, I kept getting people asking me the same things over and over and over again. And things like, what to do if you're too soft, which is what I call the nice guy. Can't say no. And that really is not good in relationships, not good in sales. Because I kept getting people asking me these things, I thought, wow, I think there's a book there. And I'll tell you my experience with writing my first book. One of my clients said, is there a book I can read with what you teach? And I said, no, I get my ideas from all over. And then I thought, wow, I could write that book. So I put my dogs in the car and I went down to the park, and I'm walking along thinking about my book, and I looked up and there was a double rainbow above. Wow. And I walked smack through that rainbow, jumped back in the car, went back and started the book.
Wow.
And it was amazing how it happened, because when I finished
the rainbow with India's independence, do you know? The day India got its independence, and they were hosting the flag for the first time, and the rainbow came out. So rainbow is a sign of good luck.
I think it's a sign of great promise too, and trust to your intuition and believe and don't doubt. And I think it's a thing of wonderful things to come. But what was amazing, let me just share this with you. When I finished the book, I thought, now I've done it, what do I do with it? And then that Saturday I opened up a paper, and in it was a story about some agents that were just opening up in our town. And I phoned them and told them about my book and said, do you know anybody that would be interested in a business book? And she said, why won't you consider us? And I went, I didn't know you took business books. So she took my book over to the book fair in Sydney and got 2 publishers that were interested in it. And that's how it got published. It just was like dominoes. It just all fell into place.
Yeah, and particularly when you have an open mind, you reach out to the people and eventually dots connect.
Yes, I'm a great believer in looking at the signs, and you know what, the universe is sending you signs all the time if you're open to them and you look. And you know, I believe the universe is absolutely trying to make everything good for you if you'll stop blocking it and stop,
Yeah.
you know, the negative thinking that stops it.
Yeah, I so agree with you. I was reading one of the books, actually. It was The Alchemist. And that Alchemist,
Yes.
that book changed my perception about how universe can come together, even though it's a fable, even though it's not a real story. But it just helps you believe that whatever the universe is throwing at you, it's throwing at you because of some reason. And you
Yes.
are the one who just have to figure out those reasons. And
Yes.
eventually things will fall in place. So when you happen to have this experience of getting that book, like the thought of writing the book, was it on your plan when you were making the list along with your husband that this year I would be doing the book?
No, well, I've always loved writing and I've always wanted to be a writer, an author, but I thought I was going to be a writer of nonfiction. So I was writing nonfiction, and I book it into my diary, and I took 1 block of time from my business and 1 block of time from my personal time, like in the weekend, and I would be writing all the time with the idea of becoming a published author. But what happens is, very often when you're on your way to a goal, the real goal comes in from the side. But you
Yeah.
have to be actively working on making that goal come true, and then the real one slips into the side and you end up doing something similar but not exactly what you thought.
Yeah, and eventually things fall in place. So is that
Yes.
how you manage your time? You book yourself a personal block and a business block of your time, and then you manage it accordingly?
If there's something I say I want to do, it needs to go into my diary, and then I know I'll do it. And so if I want to write, I have to book blocks of time into my diary so that I write. My husband and myself, we have a date night once a week. We book that into the diary, and we have a date night. So everything that I want to do, like at one stage I was learning Italian because I was going to be in Rome for 3 weeks. So I book it into the diary, and I that way it gets done.
I did that with Spanish.
There you go.
Yeah, I wanted to travel to Cuba, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. I actually want to travel the whole Central America, and that's why I don't know, I have some likeliness towards Spanish, and
Yes.
it just made things possible. So when
Yes.
you say you book everything in your diary, are you using any apps, or you're still a traditional method of logging into your diaries?
I follow. I don't know if you've heard Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Yes,
People.
yes, I have read that book. Yeah.
He has a time management concept of the 4 quadrants.
Yes.
And so I take my quadrant 2s and I put them all into my diary on my laptop, and I color code them so that if a client wants to see me, I go into the day and I know that coaching is green, workshops are orange, and red is an appointment. So if I see any of those colors, I don't need to have a look and see what it is. I can see by the color it can't be moved. So I have another color for administration and another color for preparing workshops. So they can be moved to allow a client in. But I work Stephen Covey's concept of the 4 quadrants because at one time when I was publishing that first book, when it was being published, I was also growing my business. and doing those two things at the same time is a little bit challenging. And so the more I get into using this system, the more effective and the more productive I become. It's just like when you're going to go on holidays and you have 2 weeks where you just work and you get things done and all the rest of it. It's exactly the same impact doing the quadrant 2 concept.
I was a 9 to 5er, and I call myself a 9 to 5er up until and every time when I used to travel, my travel calendar used to be more busy than, like, it used to be busier than my work calendar. And that's when I realized that what I'm working, it's just to make money. It's not making me happy, but my travels are making me happy, because I have a in 1 day's travel, I would like, okay, I want to go to this place, I want to go to this place, and I think I can squeeze this into it as well, so this that's what made me realize that you need to love what you do, and eventually you will automatically manage everything. It's a perception of mind change you need, just to love what you're doing. It's not like 9 to 5 job is bad, but unless you don't love it, it's not for me, I realize, after working for 10 years into that environment.
And that's exactly right. And I mean, one of the things that I love about what I do is because I work with so many different businesses and so many different industries. Like, for example, I went and taught some soil scientists how to sell fertilizers to farmers.
Wow.
And I've taught some really interesting people some interesting things. And one of the soil scientists showed me this theory of weed resistance, how to reduce the weeds in a paddock. And I looked at that and I went, that is the best model I have ever seen for growing sales.
Wow.
And I went to one of my clients.
Tell me a bit more about it.
Well, I tell you what happened. I went to one of my clients and I said, look at this. How good is this? And I went through it with him and he said, oh my gosh, can you put that together in a workshop and come and teach that to the team? And so what I love is being in different industries and finding concepts and ideas that you can take and translate into another industry, which is incredibly transformational for them. So it's that's one of the things I love. I kind of trawl, I read and get a lot of information, and then I'll race off to a client and say, guess what I've just found? Have a listen to this. So I love sharing the knowledge
let's talk about your book, because I'm very keenly interested about your first book, that is Team Play Strategies for Successful People Management. And I guess this is where we were leading towards, right? So this successful people management, and particularly that nice guy concept that you first told me, right?
Yes.
Why being nice guy or being soft doesn't work in a relationship or sales?
Okay, well, someone who's what I call a nice guy, that's not a nice guy, but who I call the nice guy, is someone who doesn't want to say no, and is someone who thinks that by being firm with people, they'll get really upset. And so they can't be open and honest in their communication because it might upset someone. So when you've got a nice guy in sales, they will have a lot of trouble closing a sale because they won't want to ask any hard questions, because they won't want to risk the relationship. And so they don't close a lot of sales. They have a great start, they make great relationships, but they don't close so many sales. And they're very fearful of upsetting people. That's their greatest fear. And so with the coaching, I get them to start saying things that they don't think they should. And when they say it, nothing happens. No one gets upset. This is all in their imagination. Yeah. And so it's very easily coached back to just the right amount of firmness and flexibility. And so also the nice guy gets taken advantage of People manipulate them because there are certain kinds of people out there that are almost like sharks that can smell the blood, and they can smell a nice guy a long way off. And usually these people have in their personal lives lots of family members and friends that have manipulated them over the years, and so most of them recognize it very quickly when we start to talk about it. I created a profile back in 1998, and it measures all the traits that you need to be good at sales, and it also measures the nice guy. Okay, so in my sales profile, I measure all the traits that it takes to make a good salesperson, and they find out what is the one thing that they need to work on that will make the biggest difference to their sales. So there's 3 sales styles, there's a very high empathy, that's a people person. And there's a very high, what I call confront, which means let's put the problems on the table. And there's the assertive, which means I'm not going to give up. Now, when you have a nice guy, when you have that's high, there's low assertive, they become very submissive. There's low confront, they won't put things on the table or address problems. And so they don't use all the natural traits they've got, because the nice guy is holding them back, because they think if they become assertive, they're going to upset everybody. But there's a long way to go before you upset everybody on the graph. So the nice guy has a lot of impact, and people get very frustrated with the nice guy because they won't be open and honest, and they won't say what they think for fear of upsetting people. So they are the right people to go into sales, because usually they have great people skills, but then they have to learn to reduce that nice guy and be able to close a sale. So
how do you think is this nice guy, when you said that, there are some people who can manipulate you out there, and they are like a shark who can smell it, that he's the one who I can manipulate and get. What traits you think a certain human who is willing to improve, who is willing to get their sales particularly, what are those things he can make sure, or she can make sure that this is where I need a change of perception from being a nice guy and be an assertive person, right?
Okay. So one of the ways that nice guys can start to make a change is they can start to make decisions. Like if their friend says, let's meet for a coffee, where would you like to meet for coffee? They usually say, I don't know, where would you like to go? And I say to them, you say where you're going to go for a coffee. If you're going to go to the movies together, you say what movie you want to go to. And so what that does is they make a stand, they say, I want to go to that movie, and their friend goes, okay, great, I'll meet you there. And they go, what? They didn't even get upset because I was telling them what we were going to do. And so I give them little steps to take like that. And every time they do that and nothing happens, that nice guy starts to come down to a better level. It's very easily coached, the nice guy.
It increases that assertiveness.
It lifts the assertive, and it also lifts the self-confidence. So on the profile that I do, you work on one thing and everything changes. And then you can do the profile again and look and see what your new profile looks like. So it's a great tool.
And for that, the person has to start accepting the knowledge that he's receiving from everywhere around. Start listening. I feel that's the key.
Well, actually, when you do the profile, how you describe the traits is you tell a story to demonstrate the traits, and they recognize it themselves. That's the idea behind coaching. You don't tell them anything. They discover it themselves. And if they discover it themselves, they believe it completely. And when you look at the impact together, they usually say, I don't want that impact. I want to change that impact. And they're now ready for coaching. So you don't tell them. I just tell them stories and say, this is what happens when someone has this trait. And they go, that's me. I do that. And I go, well, let's look at the impact it has. And then they say, yep, I want to change that. And so now they're ready for coaching.
That's what I do with my clients when I'm coaching. I try to tell them that there are so many people who took the risk, and after taking a risk they were successful. So we should not be afraid of taking a risk, and eventually that helps them understand. So like one of this I was telling about the girl I met, right? She was going through a breakup, and she's like, I don't know, I feel I have a dead end in my life, where to go, what to do next. I was like, if it was Elon Musk and he had 3 failed rockets, and he would be like, I don't know what to do, my SpaceX is doomed, he would have not gone for the 4th rocket, and SpaceX would have not even been there out creating a history, you know.
I think one of the things I would do in that same situation, I would start asking and saying, so what's a good thing about this breakup? And usually they go, no, there's nothing. Yes, there'll be something. What is something good about this? And as they start looking for the good, you get a shift in attitude as well. And they start to change the way they're looking at it. But to begin with, they go, no, that's nonsense. There's nothing good. And eventually you get them there and they start to see, well, maybe now I can do this, or maybe now I can do that. And they start to look at it a little differently. It's what I call flattening the emotional battery.
Oh, wow. That's a good term, because that's what I try to tell my clients is, there's a entropy, you know. So I come with a science background, right? So entropy in thermodynamics means the amount of how to put it, the amount of discharge out there. So for example, if the water is really hot, okay, eventually the hot water is going to come to a room temperature. Or if there is ice out there, you know, or snow out there, it's going to melt and come to a room temperature. So whenever there is entropy, it's going to come back to a normal state of mind, you know, a normal state. So even if you're going through a lot of distress right now, it's just a matter of time that the entropy will reduce, and it will bring you to a state of mind where you can make better decisions, you can make proper decisions. So it's just a matter of time.
But I think it's also a matter of changing their state and so taking some of the emotions out of it, It's a little bit like, you know, when I'm teaching people like to do cold calling, people hate cold calling. And so, you know, someone will phone up and they won't get to the decision maker, and then they'll make another call and the secretary won't let them through, and they make another call and, you know, they can't get through. I remember and I say to them, and I say to them, so out of those opportunities, how many chances did you have to convert the sale? And I said, well, none, because I didn't speak to them. So then you don't count them. You only count the calls that you actually get to talk to someone. And so I designed a form for people when they're cold calling to actually look at their real statistics. So they got 3 calls they couldn't get through. On the 4th, they got through, and the guy said, look, I'm too busy to talk about this today, call me back another day. On the 5th call, they got a guy, and yes, he let them make an appointment. So that's not 1 appointment out of 5 calls. That's 1 appointment out of 2 calls. That's a 50% conversion. That's great stats. So now instead of feeling totally emotionally overwhelmed because I'm never getting through to anybody, now they're looking, wow, I got 50% conversion out of the 2 calls that I had. So you're always trying to remove the emotion, and salespeople are notorious for this. They judge how they're doing by how they feel. So they may have had a great month, and then they hit a really difficult client who was rude and aggressive, and they'll go right down and feel like nothing's working, and yet they've had a good month. The other way can happen.
I have done some sales in the early phase of my career, and I have been there where I wanted to share one of my experiences. You know, I remember one time I was just cold calling, so I was doing recruiting. That's when I got to meet Sanjeev. Actually, Sanjeev was my account manager, and I was the recruiter, and we were working together. And there was some particular role for Accenture I was working for, and I was calling, and eventually I got in touch with one woman where I got in. I mean, we opened up so much that she actually cried on the phone because her brother was taking away the house of her mother, and she could not do anything. And I consoled her. I talked to her for good 40 minutes, and eventually that was converted into a sale. So she told me the only reason I was able to go through with this because you were listening. You know, and that
Yeah.
made me realize that listening is so important, and all the sales are made through a good listener.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? Very few people are taught how to listen. We're taught how to write, we're taught how to read, we're not taught how to listen. And yet, when a client feels listened to, that's one of the biggest builders of trust. And today, especially coming through what the world's come through this year, um, building trust is the first main thing that you have to do in sales. And you can do that with one or two questions. And if you listen, and if you learn to listen, you can find what I call the gold nugget. There's always a reason why they will buy from you, why they will buy now. And so you listen. And if you listen carefully, quite often they'll say similar things in a slightly different way. And that's usually a clue to the gold nugget. If you hear the same thing a couple of times, you go back and say to them, that one thing, that sounds like it's really important to you. And if they go, yes, it is, you've got the gold nugget. So careful listening is one of the key skills. Good questioning, knowing how to ask good questions, and knowing how to listen. If you do those two things really well, you don't usually have to worry too much about objections at the end of the sale. Because if they feel that you're listening to them, they feel listened to, if they feel that you care about them, then they will want to do business with you. And that's what I say. A good sale these days is to lead someone to want to do business with you. And that's done through questions and listening.
Yeah, so true, so true. And in terms of personality traits, what do you think a person, apart from listening? Listening is a, I would say, a activity, which generally goes in the background,
Yep.
because you're not doing anything except being attentive, right?
Yes.
What are the personality traits a person should develop to have that attention towards their clients' requirements? What are the
Curiosity. Imagine when you go to meet a client that you're meeting someone from Mars and you don't know how they think, you don't know what they like, you don't know what they're proud of in their business, you know nothing about them. So go in and be curious, and curious how they see things, curious how they think. And go in and be curious, because if you're curious, you'll ask different questions and you'll listen a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
besides,
not focusing on making a sale. That's the biggest mistake. You do not focus on making a sale. You focus on seeing how you can help.
yes, that is where I was leading to. It's what people are generally they particularly in sales, they get involved so much into their numbers and the results. What they are expecting is they forget what they started for, and that's what
Yes.
all the so based on my studies and my experiences and the religions which I have read, all of them, and particularly the Bhagavad Gita book I was talking to you about, it talks
Yes.
about how you can be focused on your karma and not think about the results of your karma. When
Yes.
people start thinking about their results, they are so foresighted that they cannot be focused on present. All you
Yes.
think about is future.
And I think that's the same in relationships. You know, I had someone who had fallen out with their sibling. I can't remember if it was a brother or a sister, and they wanted to reach out and make contact with them again. And they said, but they'll only push me away again. And I said, it's not what their response is that's important. It's that you do what you think is the right thing to do, and then you have peace of mind that you've done the right thing. So you reach out with the highest integrity and for the best good, And very often you have very surprising results, but you don't do something trying to anticipate what the other person's going to do. And that's the same with sales. You don't go in to see a client in order to get a sale. You go in to see how you can help. Have you got some way that you can help them? And you go ahead and try to help them, even if you think, oh, they're never going to buy from me. That's not the attitude. The attitude is, how can I help? And what do I need to do so I feel I've done the right thing? That's you coming from your integrity. People know, understand, and they pick that up. And when you come from your integrity and you're not playing any games and you're not focusing on yourself, people pick that up and they respond the same way. They become open and honest, and they come from their integrity.
Yeah, so you believe that integrity and listening and assertiveness, these are few traits a person can develop in their personality, in a nutshell, based on our conversation, to change their perception towards life.
Absolutely. But the thing about integrity is really interesting, because you have to learn what your own integrity is. And I call it ethics, what your ethics are. Now, everyone has a different ethics. So you have to learn what is really important to you in your ethics, and then you have to learn to be true for your ethics. I can't give ethics to anybody. Everybody has their own ethics. And when you breach your ethics, it's like a spiral. When you breach your ethics, you start to spiral down, and then you can start making more excuses, and then you can actually go and you can end up doing criminal things, and it's okay because you've breached your ethics so many times. So how you reverse that spiral and start to go towards success is to have a look and say, what are my ethics? Now, I've got to say, some of my ethics, for example, is I must have a clean, tidy car. I think my car reflects who I am. So I never have a mess in my car. My car's always clean and tidy, no papers and things anywhere in it. And I feel very good about driving my car, and I feel like in my ethics. Someone else could have lots of rubbish. I know some of the salespeople I've seen, they look like they live in their car. There's food papers and everywhere, but that's not part of their ethics. They will have ethics are very high on other areas. So the whole journey of sales is learning more about yourself, learning about your ethics, learning about your integrity, and learning to stand in your integrity and speak your truth in a way that has a positive impact, and walking your own path and being curious about people and not prejudging anybody.
Yeah. Will you believe if I say these are exact words in Bhagavad Gita as well? Because
really?
Yeah. So what Bhagavad Gita says, that ethic particularly, it's considered as dharma. Okay. So dharma is your religion. Okay. Now there are two types of religions. One, it's a religion that helps you live in a community. That is a communal religion. And the other is your eternal religion. That is your ethic. You know.
Yes.
And it's totally up to you how you design your ethic. You know. Like for instance, there have been bad characters as well as good characters as well out there, right? A bad character accepts a bad character because according to his ethics, being bad is the good thing, you know?
Yes.
So there are three things which helps you define your character, okay? And these are the three things that connect your soul with your physical body, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So one is sattva. Sattva is being truthful. Two is rajas, that is your passion. And three is tamas, that is the demon inside you. So these three things connect your physical body and your spiritual body. Now, if you're passionate about your truthfulness, so if you mix your rajas with your sattva, then you become the best out of it. You know, you bring the best integrity into you. And if you mix your rajas, that is your passion, with tamas, that is your devil inside you, you bring the devil out of you. So it's up to you where you define your integrity, in which direction, and eventually that is the type of person you would be. As you rightly said, you know, if you have for you, your integrity is to keep your car clean, right? So maybe clean car is a sattva, the ugly car is the tamas. So if
Yeah.
you're passionate about following the sattva, keeping your car clean, no matter what you step out of your car, you will be cleaning it right away. Like me personally, as soon as my personal, I would say, trait in those terms is, whenever I travel, as soon as I come back from traveling, I need to unpack. I cannot have my bags packed. Even if it is like 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
I have to unpack it, and I have to clean it, and I need my bags right over there. I remember one time I was I guess it was Mexico or somewhere I traveled. My return flight was 6:30 a.m. and I was supposed to go to office at 9 a.m. And
Uh,
I I unpacked, I took a shower, and then I went to office. I was late by 10 minutes at work, but that did not bother me because I wanted to unpack first,
yeah. Yeah. And I gave that example of the car because most people think integrity is big things like being honest and not telling lies and things like that. But integrity is also small things that are important for you to be true to yourself.
Yeah,
And the more you learn about yourself, the more whole you become, and the more you're able to become a better you.
that's the
So
truthfulness. That's the sattva. So
yeah, oh,
truthfulness,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
You see? So
Wonderful. I love that.
yeah. So I wanted to know, eventually you're saying that these are the values, these are the principal values which a person should have in their personality to just grow, not just
Yes.
as a sales, in as a person as well, right? In terms of
Mm.
growing their relationship, in terms of growing their bountifulness, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the thing that I love about sales is that whenever you've been with a client and you go away, you then go back and you think about the whole meeting and you think about what you said and you think, what did you miss? And you can remember body language that maybe you didn't acknowledge. So that self-assessment, for a person to be great at sales, they have to grow, they have to develop, they have to know themselves. And it's the same in anything. A good manager has to learn how to impact people in a really good way to get the best out of them. So I think this is what I love about sales and about business. Business is a great teacher. Business will tell you what you're not good at. You'll
Yeah.
find out because it reflects in the bank account. The bank account's telling you what you're good at and what you're not good at. So
This
I think sales and business are great,
this
great
leads me
teachers.
to yeah, this leads me to the next question in terms of your second book we were talking about. That is,
Yes,
coach yourself to wealth, remove the
yes,
invisible barrier, and make the quantum leap to success. It's
yes,
such an amazing title. That quantum leap. Quantum is such a small leap, but it's still a leap, right?
yes,
So tell me
yes.
how you think, what is the importance of money in our lives and how that can be managed.
Okay, let me just tell you the story about how that book got started.
Hmm.
I was running a sales training course, and in it, I did an exercise where they had to negotiate and they knew before they started what the price should be. And so they negotiated and they did it really well. They asked all the right questions and everything, and they made the sale. The next exercise I gave them was a little bit of a trick exercise. It was something that they thought wasn't going to be worth much, but there was a little clue in the person they were selling to. I put that the person they were selling to was a collector. Now, if anyone was really thinking, you'd think a collector will pay a lot more. And they had to sell to this person to see how much they could sell for. It was an old car, a very old car.
Mm-hmm.
And so their perception was it was junk. I said it could be sold for $3,000 for scrap. So I gave them the exercise to do. Now, the average salespeople in there all sold the car for $3,000. Their two top salespeople in the team, one sold it for 24,000 and one sold it for 18,000.
Which car was that?
It was just an old car, but because this was a collector, they would pay more. And so what I noticed was the good people still did a good negotiation. The other ones didn't ask any questions anymore because they thought, oh, it's only worth 3,000. So they didn't ask questions. They didn't do what they had done before. So when I asked them, why do they think they only got 3,000 and the others got 24 and 18,000? They got very, very angry with me. And as soon as you hit strong emotion, you know you've found something. So I asked them, to listen what the mindset was. And I said, why are you upset? And they said, we're not in sales just for the money. And one said, that sold it for too much. That's greedy. And I'm going, but this is someone who really values that car. They see it as a treasure. It doesn't matter what you think. So many salespeople, when they go to a sale, they are mindful of how everything costs them. And so if they go to sell something that they themselves couldn't afford, they will not sell it well if they're thinking from their own point of view. So I did this exercise again in another sales team and got the exact same result. And I thought, I need to do some research into what people think about money, because I thought salespeople, they want to earn a lot of money. Why would they get angry? Why wouldn't they say, wow, you got so much more than me. I want to know how you did that. But they didn't. They just got angry and they condemned selling it for that much money.
I guess it's the competitiveness as well, in terms of just getting to know the value of the product that you're selling. The value could be very low for one person, but at the other end, the value could be like unmatchable.
Exactly. And how do you find that out? You ask questions and you find out the value that the other person puts on it. But because I put that preconception of 3,000 in their mind, they didn't bother to find out the value. They just accepted it'd be 3,000 and they negotiated till they got 3,000 and thought they'd done a really good job. So it was a very subtle exercise. And so after that, I went round and I did a lot of interviews with people that were always broke, that always were running out of money, that were always threatening to get their phone cut off or didn't have enough money for petrol. And then I have some very, very wealthy clients. So I went and interviewed them. And I was sitting having breakfast with one of my clients, and I asked him some questions and he answered them in a way that a wealthy person does, which is a completely different mindset. And when I explained what I was doing, he grabbed my hand and he said, there's a book in there. There's a book in there.
Oh, wow.
So I wrote the book. And in this book, there are layers and layers and layers that we have on us that create our perceptions about money and wealth. And once you start to discover them, and at the end of each chapter, there are questions that you can answer to see if you've got some of these preconceptions. And I was interviewed on the radio about that book. And before we went on air, the guy said to me, yeah, I'll never be wealthy because I just don't love wealth. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. You never will be wealthy.
That's the reason.
You don't have to love wealth. That is the negative belief that he had taken on. And so I said, no, you're quite right. You never will be wealthy.
Universe is positive about his negative thought. He asked for negative thought and universe is going to throw him the same thing back.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I was playing cricket with someone. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
I was playing cricket with someone, and that guy, he had such a negative perception, So he was fielding at the boundary, and I was like, throw me the ball. He's like, I would throw it, but I don't know if it will reach or not. I was like, you got to throw it to know.
No, you don't. Because if you believe you're going to do it wrong, you can throw it and you'll do it wrong. Yeah. So what I normally do, if someone's not confident about something, I'll get them to talk to me about something that they are confident about. And let's just say I'm doing this with Bhavesh and I'm saying, okay, what do you love? You love travel. Okay, tell me about the person who loves travel. Tell me about what does he think and what is his body language and what does he believe? And then we do Bhavesh B, which is something like your friend who can't throw the ball. Okay, now what do you believe now? What's your thinking now? What's your body language? And then they look and they go, wow, that's different. Now the B is learned behavior, and the A is your natural passion and your natural belief in yourself. So what I then say, now you have a choice. When you're going to do something you think you're not good at, you can choose to step into being Bhavesh A and bringing that mindset and skills with you to the task. And all of a sudden they find they're doing things very differently, but they have a choice. They can see themselves slipping into that old thinking pattern, and then they can choose to step out of it into the successful pattern.
Yeah. And will you believe it if I tell you these are few words also in Bhagavad Gita?
No. I'm going to have to read this. I'm just going to have to read this.
You must. In fact, if you don't have time to read the book, I have created a YouTube series of 18 episodes, 15 minutes each.
I'm going to be watching those. Once all my visitors leave, I'm going to be sitting watching all those.
You must. Yeah, because I want to. I personally want everyone to read this book from the point of view as an author and not as a religion, because as a author he talks so many things, and so many things can be linked from that book just itself, and it has such a highly complex language. I wanted to make it easy by making YouTube videos on it, and every chapter is a 15 minutes episode. It's a 15 to 18 minutes episode where they talk about such traits, and one of them is how you pursue yourself in terms of a negative personality or a positive personality. So when we were talking about what you want to be, that Bhavesh A and Bhavesh B, that example you gave me, so such type of personality, what he says is the best personality out there the name is Sthit Pragya. Okay, so in Sanskrit, so Sthit means stable and Pragya means river, so a stable river which is stable on the surface, but it flows underneath, so you have a stable state of mind, a stable personality when you're dealing with people around you, but underneath you're flowing like a river, and this is the perfect personality that you need to be. So if you are if there's a lot of agitation around you, if there's so much of chaos around you, no matter what, you have a stable state, you have a stable personality on the surface, and underneath you keep doing your work, you keep doing your karma, and eventually things will lead you to a place, to a direction where there's bliss.
Yes, absolutely. I tell you, someone who I admire very much was John Wooden, who was a UCLA basketball coach, and he won, I think, their championship for 8 or 9 years in a row, and he never ever picked a star. In America, they would buy in a big star for their team. He would take ordinary guys, and he had a pyramid of traits and character traits, and the goal of each person was to become the best person they could be. And so he would work with each person to go through and gain all these traits and to become the best they could be. And he trained them all at the basics. So he didn't hire in any stars. He just worked on each person becoming the best he could be.
And he was personality. And
he was an amazing man. Well, what John Wooden used to do is he would focus very closely on small things that they did, where they were positioning a foot, and and then he'd get them just to practice that one thing that would make a big difference.
That's the quantum leap.
Yes, it is. So I thought he was amazing because he took ordinary people and made them extraordinary, and he didn't go looking for big stars and what have you, and he was a man of absolute integrity. He was a wonderful man. He just passed away last year, I think, or the year before, and he was extraordinary. I've got about 3 or 4 of his books, and I've got a copy of the pyramid of all the traits.
Do share it
Yeah,
with me, and I can
I
share it with
will. I will. I'll send you a copy of the pyramid so that you can see. And you see, the one I've got is a signed copy, so it's
Oh
extra
yeah.
special.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, yeah. The most influential person who is alive right now, and I have seen him personally, and I got his signed copy of his book, is Sadhguru. If you ever heard about him, so
No, I don't.
yeah, Sadhguru. He's an Indian mystic, and he has he has written bunch of books. The book I got signed was Inner Engineering, and he was
Oh,
visiting Vancouver. And so he's from India, but when he was visiting Vancouver, that's when I got his book signed. And I was able to touch his hand. Touching his hand itself felt like, oh my God, Uh,
that's his energy in that book.
yes,
When you hold that book, that's his energy you're
yeah,
holding.
yeah, and that book talks about how you can engineer yourself, your inner being, because
Yes.
right now the world is all about, like, India particularly is full of engineers, right? But we talk about mechanical engineering, civil engineering, but we don't talk about inner engineering,
Yeah.
and that inner engineering is the change we need to bring into. So I
Yes.
would I would highly recommend you to. He has a YouTube channel as well, I guess, Mystic of India.
Oh,
So
okay.
MOI, you can look him up, and
Okay.
oh my God, he you will fall in love with the things he says. So, well, I think we will have hours and hours to talk about all the books we are reading, but we may have to end our
I
episode
think
over
we
here.
do.
Yes,
Yes, I think we
and
do.
one thing I would ask you to tell to our listeners as well as our viewers, because it's going to be on both YouTube and podcast, is what is that one thing you believe in terms of perception a person should bring into their life to make it blissful?
Oh, I think I think there's a conflict here, but I'm going to say I think to be grateful for everything that you have, because we spend so much time wanting and living in the future or living in the past, and we completely miss all the wonderful things that we have in our lives. We have love and we have abundance, and we have to be grateful for what you have is something. You cannot be unhappy and depressed and angry and upset if you're grateful at the same. You can't be that at the
Yeah,
same time.
these are opposite poles.
Yeah, being grateful is the pathway to actually appreciating what you have. Now you can set goals and look for the future and be working there, but to actually at some time during your day to stop and look around you and think of everything that you have and to be grateful for everything that you have is absolutely, I think, one of the ways towards a blissful life.
Oh, that's such a wonderful advice. That's such a wonderful advice. With this, I would like to sign off from our podcast, Almost Buddha. I would highly recommend you guys to look up Shirley Mckinnon, and I'll be sharing the links of her books. It's available on Amazon. And thanks a lot, Shirley.
Oh, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed our discussion. I think we could go for a long
I
time.
know.
And I'm just so, people who listen to the kind of podcast that you do, they are seekers, they are searchers for a better life. And so it's just such an honor to talk to you and to be able to share ideas. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Gratitude.